Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. I'm super excited that you guys are here today. So, if you guys want to learn more about what trust funds are and how to set it up, meaning the steps that you need to take and how to actually use it to protect your assets, you guys are in the right place. So, tonight I am going to be teaching you guys how to actually protect your assets using the most powerful entity, which is a trust entity. So without further ado, I want to introduce myself. My name is Christina Yvette. I am the founder of Seven Ways Wealth, and I have been a trustee for going on 11 years now. So this year, 2026, is going to be my 11th year in trusteeship. So I know a thing or two, and I want to teach you a thing or two. So without further ado, what I want to do is I have a short presentation for you. So I'm going to go through the presentation and then I will be able to answer any questions that you guys might have after I'm done with the presentation, okay? So just want to check the pulse in the room. How is everyone doing this evening?
Doing well, thank you.
All right, awesome.
Doing
Thank you.
doing
Thank
pretty
you.
good.
Awesome. Excited that you guys are here. So let's just dive right in. So allow me to share my screen one moment. All right, here we go. All right. So, as I mentioned, I am Christina. I have been a trustee since 2015, and that was by way of real estate. So, originally, I was a registered nurse, and when I was a nurse, I was living paycheck to paycheck. So I was burnt out in my career, and that was only 2 years into my career where I was working 5 days a week. I was working 12-hour shifts, and I was so burnt out and frustrated because at that time I had a 1-year-old baby and I wasn't spending any time with my baby. So I wasn't raising my son. I was just letting my parents take care of him. And so, because I was so frustrated that I was spending more time in the hospital with my coworkers and my patients than I was at home with my 1-year-old, I told myself that I needed a second stream of income. And so one day I was driving to work and I hear this guy named Dan Merrill say, "Hey, do you want to learn how to flip houses?" And so I was like, yeah, I want to learn how to flip houses. And so I ended up signing up for a 3-day seminar, went to the seminar. I learned so much about real estate. And so I dived right into mentorship and I ended up buying my first property 6 months after that seminar. And when I bought that property, I bought it and I put it into an LLC. And my mentor told me that I needed to put that property into a trust. And at that time, I was 25 years old and I didn't know what a trust was. And I was young, and this was my first property. And this property I was flipping. So I had contractors and subcontractors coming in and out of the property. So I knew at that point that I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I went and I put that property into a trust. And at that time, I became a trustee. And I protected that property because anything could have happened because it was going under renovation. And so I didn't want someone to get injured on the construction site and have the ability to be able to sue me and take the property away from me. So I listened to what my mentor said and I set up that trust and I protected that property. And I have been operating within trustee ever since. So fast forward into the future, now I educate people on how to become a trustee. So, with that being said, let me teach you guys what an actual trust is. So, a lot of people they have heard the term trust, but they don't really know what it is, or they heard the term, trust fund or trust fund baby, and they're like, what is a trust, right? And so, what I want you to know and understand is that a trust is an entity, and you are an entity. So, you are a living, breathing entity. And the way that you operate in society is you operate with your first and last name and with your social security. So a trust does the same thing. So a trust is a living, breathing entity as well. And the trust is also operating in society with its name and its 9-digit number. So that 9-digit number is called an EIN. And that is how you're able to enter into all of these transactions for the trust. So a trust can do anything and everything that you as a natural person, as a human, can do. Meaning that if you can buy a house, a trust can buy a house. If you can buy a car, a trust can buy a car. If you could build credit, a trust can build credit. If you could write a book and be an author, a trust can write a book and be an author. So there's no limitations to what a trust entity can do. Now, the way that this entity comes into existence is through a contract. And that is what we are talking about when we use the term contractual entity. So a trust is a contractual entity, right? So it comes into existence through a contract. There are several different parts to this contract. The first part that I want you to be aware of is the declaration, where you're declaring what it is and what it is not. So you're declaring that in this contract, I'm setting up a trust. And it is not an LLC or a joint venture or a partnership. So that is the first part. The second component is the bylaws, where you put all the terms and conditions or all the rules and regulations of how you want this entity to be operated. Okay. So now that we know that it is a contractual entity, right? It is a contract that you have to set up in order to establish a trust. Let's find out who the actual parties involved. So the trust has many different parties involved in this actual contract. Okay, so the first party that I want you to be aware of is the grantor. The grantor is the creator of the trust. So that is the individual that establishes the trust with the trustee. And so they are what we call a settlor or a trustor. Okay. And so they are the parties that not only create the trust, but also puts the first thing of value into the trust. So it gives the trust value. Okay. So the next party that I want you to be aware of is the trustee. So the trustee is the controller of the trust. That is the individual who is operating the trust on a day-to-day basis, who has full control and management over the assets that are inside of the trust. So they do all the hiring, the firing, the maintenance, everything. They control all the trust funds, everything inside of the trust, okay? And so they do this for the benefit of the beneficiaries. So the beneficiaries are the inheritors of the trust. So they are the individuals that are going to receive the assets that are inside of the trust after the trust is terminated or dissolved, okay? But in the meantime, while the trust still exists and is in full operation, the beneficiaries are going to be receiving distributions. So they have what we call distribution rights, where they will be receiving money and gifts from the trust, okay? So now that we understand the different parties involved in this contract, let's understand the different types of trust and the different types of contracts. So every single trust falls within the categories that I'm going to mention, okay? So the first category that I want you to be aware of is express versus implied. An express trust is a written trust where you actually have it in that contract style. So it's on paper, it's in black and white, you can physically touch it, everything's in writing, okay? Versus an implied trust is the verbal agreement, meaning the parties sat down, they spoke about it, and there's rules and regulations that are in place, but there's no contract, okay? So out of those two categories, you want to have an express trust versus an implied trust, okay? The next category that I want to share with you is simple versus complex. A simple trust is shorter in nature, and because it's shorter in nature, the trustees are required to give out 100% of the money that's inside of the trust. So, meaning that it has to distribute everything that's inside of the trust. No funds can stay inside of the trust, right? Versus a complex trust. So a complex trust is longer in nature, it has more rules, regulations, or what we call provisions. And so because of the nature of the trust, the trustees are not required to give out the distribution. So it is optional and funds can actually stay inside of the trust, okay? So the next category that I want to share with you guys is discretionary versus non-discretionary. So a discretionary trust is where the trustee has full discretion to be able to make decisions for the trust that are not inside of the contract, meaning that these decisions that the trustee has to make are not in writing, okay? Versus a non-discretionary trust means that if it's not in writing, they cannot do it. So they don't have the flexibility to be able to make decisions for the trust that they feel is in the best interest of the overall estate. Okay. Now, the next category that I want to give you is statutory versus non-statutory. So, with a statutory trust, every single state has its own laws, and those laws are called state statutes and codes. And so, with a statutory trust, what we're saying is that the state that you choose to set up the trust inside of that contract is embedded the state statutes and codes. And with this type of trust, because it has the state statutes and codes embedded in the contract, you're restricted to where you can only operate and use that trust in that one state. So you cannot use it anywhere else. So if you set it up in Texas, you can only use it in Texas. Okay. So with that being said, with the statutory trust, you are required to actually register it. And so it is going to be available on the public records for people to be able to search for the existence of your trust and they can actually see the contents. So they can actually see the contract that you had set up for the trust, okay? Now, on the contrary to that, you have non-statutory. So with the non-statutory trust, what we're saying is that there are no state statutes and codes embedded inside of the contract. So because that is the case, you're able to operate a non-statutory trust in the entire nation and all of the U.S. territories. So there is no restriction, right? With that type of contract, because it's non-statutory, you're not required to register the trust. So it can remain private and it's not going to be available for people to search to see that the trust exists and to see what's inside of the trust, meaning that they can see the pages, of the actual contract. Okay. The last category that I want to give you guys is revocable versus irrevocable. So with a revocable trust, when we are referring to revocability, we are referring to only one party out of the three parties that we mentioned earlier. So the one party that we're referring to is the grantor, which is the creator. And so with a revocable trust, what we're saying is that the grantor has the power to be able to revoke the trust, right? And so they can revoke not only the trust, but all of the terms and conditions that are set forth in the trust. So meaning that if they wanted to terminate the trust, they can. If they wanted to make changes to any sections in the trust, they can process an amendment and make changes. If they wanted to remove the trustees and the beneficiaries, they are able to do that. If they wanted to remove assets from the trust, they can do that. So because the grantor has so much power and control, typically the grantor is also the trustee and the beneficiary. So that one individual will serve as all three parties. And so that type of trust is actually seen as an alter ego. So a revocable trust is not seen as a separate entity from the grantor. It is seen as them, and that type of trust usually operates under the grantor's social security number. So that means that if you have creditors that are coming after the grantor, that means that they can also come after the trust. And so they can sue the trust. If the trust were to end up in court, then that trust can be pierced, right? And so if the trust is pierced in the court system, that means that what is going to happen is you are going to be forced to produce the trust in court, which is now going to reflect that the trust is now a part of the public records. And so all of the pages of the trust are now going to be visible. And everyone is going to know the existence of the trust as well as the contents of the trust. So what's inside the trust, who the beneficiaries are, what assets you have inside of the trust, okay? So unfortunately, a revocable trust does not protect your assets. So the only thing that it pretty much does is help you avoid probate, okay? Now, the other type of trust is an irrevocable trust. An irrevocable trust is where the grantor and the trustee cannot be the same person. And typically, the grantor, the beneficiary, and the trustee are three separate people. Okay. So, because the parties are separate individuals, this type of trust is seen as a separate entity. So, it's not seen as the grantor or the trustee. Okay, and so this entity, because it's a separate entity, it is going to operate with its own EIN number. Okay. So with that being said, that is where this type of trust is, your assets are actually fully protected because if creditors try to come after the grantor or the trustee, they cannot come after an irrevocable trust. And if they try to sue the irrevocable trust, that trust is going to go to, it's going to go to court, but they are not going to pierce through an irrevocable trust, which means that you get to maintain the privacy of that trust. So with an irrevocable trust, your assets are going to be fully protected. Okay. So let's continue on. So now let's address the different steps that you need to take in order to actually create a trust. So step one is for you to determine the type of trust that you want to create. So with this being said, what you need to know is that you want to create a trust, right, that is going to maintain your privacy, and that is also going to protect your assets. So this type of trust is what we call a bulletproof trust, right? And so that type of trust falls under the following categories. So all of the categories that I just mentioned to you guys, it falls under these types. So the first one is that it should be express in nature. It should be complex. It should be non-statutory. It should be discretionary, and it should be irrevocable. So as long as it falls within those five categories, then your assets are going to be fully protected, and it's what we call a bulletproof trust, where it's very hard to penetrate through this trust, it's very hard to dismantle this trust, and it's very hard to pierce through the trust, okay? Now that you've determined the type of trust that you want to create, step two is for you to actually determine the trust name, okay? So when you are naming the trust, there's two things that I need you to be aware of. So the first one is do not name the trust after yourself, okay? This is the mistake that I see a lot of people make where they are going to go and name the trust, John Smith because their name is John Smith, right? So that is what you want to avoid because the reason why we're actually creating a trust is for privacy, right? And so you don't want anyone to know that you're actually associated with the trust. The next thing is that you need to actually, the next thing is that you don't have to have the word trust in the actual name, okay? So a lot of people think that that's required. And then you have to go ahead and appoint the different parties. So you're going to appoint a grantor, you're going to appoint a trustee, you're going to appoint beneficiaries and a successor trustee. So when it comes to appointing the different parties, obviously everyone has to be at least 18 years of age or older, and you want to appoint yourself to be the trustee so that you can have full management and control over the trust. That is what you want. As far as the beneficiaries usually are your children or a next of kin. And then the successor trustee is the person who's going to take over after you in the event that something happens to you. Meaning, if something happens to you where you become incapacitated, where you decide that you want to resign, or where you transition. So if any of those three things happen, then you need someone to pick up where you left off. You need someone to take over after you because the trust is designed to outlive you. And so you want to have that plan in place already because a trust cannot be operated without a trustee. Okay? So number three is for you to actually create the trust. And so when you're creating the trust, you're going to put all of these provisions in place, okay? And they're going to be carried out by the trustee. Now, some of the provisions that we put are spendthrift provisions. So a spendthrift is the beneficiaries that want to spend all of the money. So they want to blow the dough, right? And so what you want to do is you want to put yourself in a position to where you are going to control the money from the grave. Because the last time I checked, you're the one who actually built the wealth. And so you want to be able to let the beneficiaries know what they can spend the money on and what they cannot spend the money on. So meaning you can tell them, hey, you can only spend the money on, education or real estate or stocks and bonds or crypto, something like that, right? And then you can tell them that they're restricted from spending the money on illicit drugs or gambling or, buying weapons, things like that, right? So that's one of the spendthrift provisions. Usually we'll then put like an age restriction so that the beneficiaries will only be able to receive their distribution when they've reached a level of maturity, right? And so sometimes we'll put an age restriction of, 21 years old or 25 years old or 30 years old, right? So there's many different spendthrift provisions that you can put in place. Another one is the education restriction, right? If you want them to have a college degree or if you want them, to get certified in accounting or anything like that, then you can also make those minimum age restrictions as well, and education restrictions. So the next thing is that you need to actually notarize the trust. So the trust needs to be notarized by two individuals. So it needs to be notarized by the grantor and the first trustee. And when the trust is notarized, then it becomes legal and you are able to operate it. So the first thing that you want to do when you are operating the trust is you want to go ahead and open up the bank account. So that is what we call the trust fund. So you are going to establish a banking relationship with any financial institution of your choice that actually offers a trust account. So that could be a bank, a credit union, or a brokerage firm or any financial institution. The types of accounts usually are checking accounts, savings account, money market accounts, and cash management accounts. And so you're going to fund it with whatever the minimum required is for the bank. So some of these banks, they require $100, $500, $1,000, just depending on the bank, okay? So you'll go ahead and fund it with that plus whatever additional funds that you want to lend to the trust. Now, there's two things that you're going to bring with you. You're going to bring the certificate of trust, which is proof of identity that the trust exists. So just like how you walk around with a driver's license that shows your name and your date of birth and your address, the trust is also going to walk around with a certificate of trust that shows the name, the date of birth, the address, okay? So it's very similar to what you do as a natural person. The other thing is the EIN letter. So that is a number that is issued through the IRS, and that is for banking purposes so that you're able to open up the trust fund account, okay? So now that you opened up the trust fund account and you actually funded it with whatever amount that you want to go into that account, the next thing you want to do is you want to transfer assets into the account. So some of the assets that you want to transfer are real estate, right? So it could be a list of assets. So you can go ahead and transfer real estate. You can do furniture, you can do jewelry, you can do insurance policies, you can do cash, you can do crypto, you can do weapons like guns. So there's a lot of assets that you can place into a trust, right? Stocks, bonds, all of that stuff. So let's just say it's real estate, right? So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to add it into the trust indenture. So that piece of real estate, right? Let's just say it's your primary residence. It needs to be added into the actual trust documents and listed as an asset. The next thing that's going to happen is that you have to legally transfer that property into the trust. So when you bought that property, you received the deed, right? A deed to the property. And so you have to redeed that property from your personal name into the name of the trust. And then you go and record it with the county. And now the county is going to show that the new owner of that property is the trust. Okay. That is how the property is going to be protected. The property is only going to be protected if it's in the name of the trust. Okay. So this is the mistake that I see a lot of people make is that they totally forget to legally transfer their assets into the trust, okay? All right, so what can a trust actually protect you from? It can protect you from bankruptcy, from divorce, from foreclosure, from heavy taxations, from lawsuits, and from probate. So let's just talk about a few. So let's talk about divorce. When it comes to divorce, a lot of people don't know that a divorce is, sometimes a transfer of wealth, right? So it is a lawsuit between two spouses where unfortunately sometimes one spouse will end up with everything and the other spouse will end up with nothing. But what's included inside of the divorce is all of your assets as well as all of your liabilities. Now, what you need to understand is that you are not the trust and the trust is not you. So if you set up a trust and you put a house, a car, and cash money into that trust, if you get a divorce 5, 6, 7 years into the future, they cannot pull that trust into your divorce. Why? Because everything that's included in the divorce is everything that's in your personal name, like your 401k, your credit cards, what's in your checking account, things like that, your pension, all of that stuff, right? Versus the trust. So you are not the trust is not you. So they cannot pull that trust into the divorce, which means that everything that you have in that trust is fully protected. The next thing let's talk about is taxes, right? So a lot of you guys don't know that the government taxes you when you die. So there is a death tax, there's also an inheritance tax. And so the trust can actually protect you and your estate from being subject to those taxes at the end of life. The next one is lawsuits, right? So a lot of people, they wait until they're getting sued in order for them to protect themselves from a lawsuit. So I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to wait until you're getting sued, right? And I've seen a lot of people do it. So when it comes to us living in the United States of America, right? We live in the most sue-friendly country ever, right? And so if you're here in the US, then you are already treading in dangerous territory because everyone wants to sue you, meaning your employer wants to sue you, your employee wants to sue you, your neighbor, your best friend, your brother, your sister, everybody wants to sue you. And so, once again, you don't want to wait until you are getting sued, right? So, let me give you a quick example. Let's just say that you are an entrepreneur and you have an LLC, right? A lot of people think that they're protected with their LLCs. But my question to you is, what does LLC stand for?
Limited liability corporation. Limited liability.
Limited liability company, right? And so when you hear the word limited liability company, what is it that you are understanding there? Because it's in the actual name. So what are you hearing there?
That is
We
limited.
have limited liability and yeah,
It's a
they have
company.
limited, we have the rest.
Exactly. So if the company has limited liability, because that's the nature of the business, right? That's the nature of this entity. The entity has limited liability. So if the company has limited liability, who do you think has the other portion of that limited liability?
You do.
Correct. So if you are the owner of that business, meaning you're the authorized member of that LLC, then you have the other half of that limited liability. A lot of people think that the LLC is the end all be all, right? But the LLC only gives you a shield, right? And it's just a little tiny bit of protection, right? And so what can actually happen is, let's just say that you have a customer, and this customer, it wants to go ahead and sue your LLC, right? Once again, dangerous territory, right? Because it is so easy for them to find out who the business owner is of the LLC. All they have to do is go down to the Secretary of State's website, right? And then they just put in the name of your business, and all of your information comes up. So they know the address, they know the phone number, they know the name of the owner, they know everything, right? And so now they know how to serve your LLC and they know who to go after, okay? So you're all over the public records, everyone knows who the business owner is. So let's just say that your LLC ends up in litigation and you lose that judgment. And so now there's a judgment for $500,000 on your LLC, right? If that LLC cannot cover that judgment, then the judge is going to pierce through the corporate veil. And if that judge pierces through the corporate veil, they're going to go after the authorized member of the LLC, which is you, which means that they're going to go after you personally for everything that you have, right? In order to cover that $500,000, which means that they are going to garnish your wages. They are going to garnish your entire bank account, and they're going to seize every asset that they possibly can. So if you have a car, it's gone. If you have a house where you and your children live, it's gone. Why? Because they need to be able to fulfill that judgment. And so since you decided to be the business owner on paper for your LLC, then you decided to take liability for the LLC. So you're literally saying, if anything happens to this company, I'll cover it, right? Which is not why we went into business. And so what you want to do is, once again, a trust is there to protect the asset. A lot of people don't even look at their LLC as an asset when it is, right? This LLC pays you. This LLC has cash flow. This LLC has assets. This LLC is an asset. And so what you need to do is you need to remove yourself as the authorized member. You need to set up a trust, specifically a business trust, to be able to own that LLC. So now that you've removed yourself, you place the business trust as the new owner of that LLC. And now the business trust is going to take full liability, meaning 100% liability for that LLC. So if anything happens to that LLC, then they will go after the trust. And that trust is designed to not offer any products, any services. They're not cash flowing. They don't have a heavy bank account or anything like that, right? And so you're going to be operating it like a holding company, okay? So that is the route that you want to take. So if you're not structured that way, just know in your mind it is time to get restructured in 2026. Okay. So let's go back to asset protection. So now that you guys know that a trust can protect you from, hold on one second, let me go back to the slides. So now that you know that a trust can actually protect your business and protect you from lawsuits, let's talk about what it can do for your personal assets. So let me ask you a question, right? So if you have a primary residence, right? This is your house, this is where you live, okay? This is where your children live. So this is where you call home, okay? So if you have this house, and let's just say that you didn't wake up tomorrow and this house is in your personal name. My question to you is, how do you expect that house that's in your personal name to be transferred legally to your son or to your daughter that you want to inherit the property? Somebody come off mute, let me know.
It has to go through probate.
You need to put it in a trust to keep it from going to probate.
So you guys are absolutely correct. So what we're saying here is that if I have my primary residence and I don't wake up tomorrow, in order for my son and my daughter to get my house, they have to go to court. So I'm actually leaving it up to a judge. That judge doesn't know me. That judge doesn't know my son or my daughter. But because I didn't have my affairs in order, I decided to just leave it up to chance and to see wherever the wind blows and if they get to receive the property. So that is the Russian roulette game that you're playing right now. Why? Because you have bought into the lie that society has told you, right? And a lot of us were programmed, right? Whatever society dishes out, we're just eating it up. So society has told you or made you believe that your children will automatically receive your property, right? Oh, my house is automatically gonna go. And even people that they only have one child, right? They're like, oh, I only have one son, so it's gonna go straight to my son, right? But some of us, we have estranged spouses that we're still legally married to. Some of us, we have siblings that just come out of nowhere, right? Random siblings. Some of us, even our parents, wants to make claims onto the property, right? So there are so many other external circumstances that might happen, okay? Now, you're leaving it up to the judge to be able to make this decision. So let me just give you a scenario. Okay, so let's just say that you have a will, right? Because a lot of people think, oh, I have a will. That means that, I'm okay, right? Which is another lie, right? That you have bought into. Now, I'm not saying that a will is not good, but I'm saying that it's not good enough. Why? Because a will is a set of instructions, right? And so those instructions are already intended to be carried out in the probate process. So if you have a will, just know that you will end up in probate, because that is the way a will is designed. It's designed to go straight automatically to probate court, and it's designed to be carried out. All of your wishes, right? So a will is your last wishes, right? Your last will and testament. Those are your last wishes. So a will is a wish list. A will is where you're saying, I wish my son will get my house. I wish my daughter will get the $200,000 in my bank account. That is what a will is, okay? Now, a will, I just mentioned, is that it is a legal instrument, but it is not an entity. It can't own anything. A will can't own the house, right? So a lot of people think, oh, I have a will, so I'm all set. No, you're not. right? It's just a wish list, okay? So your family's automatically going to go to probate. So a will is almost as if you didn't have anything at all anyways. Now, let's talk about what the probate process looks like, okay? So that you guys can have a better understanding. So the first thing that I want you to know is that when you're going through this entire process, right? Let's just say that you have a house, a car, and $500,000 in the bank, okay? And so you didn't wake up tomorrow. So what's going to happen is because you didn't have your affairs in order, because you only had a wish list, the state where you're a resident, they're going to create an estate for you. Okay. So your estate is a living entity that the government has created for a dead person. Okay. So now they create this estate for you. They name it after you. So they're going to call it the John Smith Estate. Then they're going to transfer your house, your car, and the bank account. Those funds are now going to go into the estate. Okay. So the first thing that happens is your estate goes straight into probate court. Now, your estate needs to be represented by a probate attorney. And because it's in probate court, the first thing that happens is the judge is going to pay off your liabilities, meaning that the judge is going to start to pay off your debt. Do you know how many creditors are going to be coming out of the woodworks now that they have found out that you have an estate? Okay, so that means that that student loan that you had 30 years ago, the judge is going to pay it off. The credit card bills, right? All of the credit card bills, all of that debt, they're going to pay it off, right? Any other form of debt. So one creditor and one piece of debt that a lot of people don't think of is that at the end of life, you rack up a lot of medical bills, right? So you were sitting in the ICU for a week. That's $200,000, right? Maybe you was in a nursing home, a rehab, or anything like that, assisted living, whatever it is, right? And so now you have a lot of hospital bills, you have a lot of medical bills, you have the ER, the ICU, and then you have Medicare and Medicaid. Those insurances, right? Those government agencies, they actually want to be reimbursed. So I will tell you without a shadow of a doubt that Medicaid is going to come after your estate because they want to be reimbursed. And so now you didn't know that you owe Medicaid, $150,000, right? And so the judge starts to go and pay off all the liabilities. And whatever is left over is what your children get. So your children, they don't receive their inheritance. They don't receive the whole thing. What your children get are the leftovers. Why? Because you didn't have your affairs in order. And so you left it up to chance. You left it up to the government. You left it up to the court system. And once again, they don't know you, they don't know your kids, right? Now, what I've seen in certain situations in probate is that the cash that was in the bank account was not enough to pay off the debt. And so, unfortunately, the judge now decides to sell mom's house. I know you've seen it on Zillow, right? Where you see houses that are in probate, right? And so what happens is they are going to sell your house. And so now your children are fighting in court. And you're doing your children a big disservice because one, they are fighting either in each other, which we've seen it, right? It's like they're not even siblings anymore because they're fighting over mom and dad's stuff. So they're fighting each other, and then they're fighting the court system to keep mom and dad's house. And so that is the situation that you have just put your children in. So you are doing your family a disservice by not setting up your estate now while you're living. So your children are getting the inheritance. They're losing their inheritance. That's what I'm seeing on a daily basis. Our children are losing their inheritance. They're not getting it. Okay. How many properties have you seen being auctioned off on the county steps? Why do you think that happens? It's not happening for no reason. Okay. So with that being said, let me show you what it looks like if you decided, yes, I'm going to get my affairs in order. Yes, I am going to set up my estate now while I'm living. So let's just say you set up a trust, right? And you transferred that house, that car, and that cash money, you transferred it into the trust fund. And so now you did not wake up tomorrow, right? And so you transitioned, and what is going to happen now is nothing. Nothing is going to happen. Why? Because your whole entire estate, right, does not have to go to probate. So what truly happens is you choose the successor. You choose someone who is going to take over for you. And so your successor trustee is going to pick up where you left off. So if you transition tomorrow, guess what? They come right into place and they start operating the trust. And so they're going to manage the assets that are inside of the trust. They're going to continue to manage the trust funds. Your children are going to continue to benefit from the trust. Your children get to now grieve in peace because they just lost the most important person in their life. Trust me, I know because I lost my mother. So you are now not doing your family a disservice. There's no chaos. Everything is orderly. Why? Because you had your affairs in order. And because the trust is designed to outlive you, right? And so the trust still exists. The trust is going to live on for another 100 years. And that house is still going to be there, right? So that is what it looks like if you decide, yes, I'm going to get my affairs in order. Your family gets to avoid the entire probate process because unfortunately, all of us are going to end up in probate if we have anything that's in our personal name. That's why you don't want to have anything in your personal name. Why? Because remember that debt that we were talking about? If you have a trust and you transition, that debt dies with you. Those creditors cannot come after your trust estate. They don't even know the existence of your trust estate. So your children get to receive their entire inheritance and they get to receive it without, without any issues, right? Without heavy taxation, without going to court, right? And so that's what you want. So let's continue on. So that's what the probate process is, and that is what you want to avoid, okay? And the only way to avoid it is by setting up a trust. A trust is the only way to avoid probate. There is no other way to avoid probate. No other way. So let's talk about the wealth building formula, okay? So this is how you're actually going to use a trust in order to build wealth. I have 3 pillars here. I have structure, credit, and invest. The first one is structured. So if you don't have a trust within your structure, then you want to go again and get restructured, okay? So these are the 3 trusts that I recommend: a business trust, a family trust, and a tax-exempt nonprofit trust. Everyone on this call should have a for-profit and a nonprofit within their structure. So let me break down each trust. So the first one is the business trust, which I mentioned earlier, which is that is what you're going to use in order to own your LLCs and your corporations. You do not want to be the owner of your LLCs and your corporations, okay? And so with this business trust, you can use it 2 ways. You can either use it and operate it like a holding company, or you can use it and you can operate it like a traditional business. So if you don't want to set up an LLC, then you can set up the business trust and you can start, you can start operating the business however you want, right? Whatever type of business it is, if it's e-com or retail or restaurant or whatever it is, okay? And so the other way is for it to be non-operational as a holding company. And so that means that it's going to own your LLCs and your corporations. So let's just say that this business trust owns your LLC and your LLC generated $100,000. That $100,000 will be distributed to the business trust, okay? And so now $100,000 just came into the business trust. The business trust is a for-profit entity, okay? So that means that it's required to pay taxes, right? That tax rate is about 37%, right? Which is high. And so one thing that I love about a trust is that you spend the money first and you're taxed on the leftovers. And so that is the most magical thing about a trust. And I'm going to say it again because I'm not sure if you caught that. You spend the money first, and then you're taxed on whatever is left, on the leftovers. Okay? So what is our goal? Our goal is to spend the money, right? And so when you have 100,000 that's coming in, right? You have what we call operating expenses, right? That is administration, that's maintenance, that's everything, right? Payroll, whatever it is. And so we call it OPEX. So with the operating expenses, let's just say that it costs about 30,000 in order to run the business trust, right? Well, now you have $70,000 that's left. So you're going to have to pay taxes on that 70,000, right? But one beautiful thing about a trust that no other entity can do is that the trust has a beneficiary. And so that 70,000 could go straight to the beneficiary, and then the trust doesn't have to pay taxes on it, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to do a distribution, and we're going to distribute the 70,000 to the beneficiary. Now, the way that we structure it is we make the beneficiary of the business trust, we make it the family trust. So your beneficiary can be an entity or a natural person. So the family trust is going to be the beneficiary of the business trust. So now that 70,000 is just now distributed to the family trust. And now on the business trust level, right, you had 100,000 that came in, 30 was written off in the taxes, right, due to operating expenses, and then 70 of it was distributed to the beneficiary. So that means that the whole 100,000 is gone and you have a 0% tax liability. So this business trust is now paying 0% in taxes, okay? So let's move on to the private family trust, right? The reason why we make the beneficiary of the business trust the family trust is because we're making the money in the business and we need to be able to spend it on the family. And so that's why we have the money flow from the business trust to the family trust so that we can spend it on the family, okay? So on the family trust, that's where you're going to put your house, you're going to put your insurance policies, you can put your stocks and bonds, things like that, right? So that those expenses can be covered by the family trust. Now, with the family trust, that's where you're going to make your children the beneficiaries, okay? So all of your children will be the beneficiaries of that trust. So now we had $70,000 that just came in. And so let's just say it costs us $60,000 in order to run the family. So that's automatically going to be tax deducted, right? Why? Because we have mortgage, we have utilities, we have insurance, we have groceries, we have tuition, we have education, everything, right? And so all of those things are considered operating expenses, okay? So now that we have written off 60,000 in operating expenses, we have $10,000 that's left. And with the $10,000, we would have to pay taxes on that. But another thing that we can do within the trust organization is we can do a charitable contribution to any charity of our choice. So that means that we can donate that $10,000 to our charitable trust, right? And so that is the next trust, right? And so now that we have donated it to our charitable trust, then we're all done paying taxes on the private family trust level. So we have a 0% tax liability because 60% went to write-offs and the other 10 went to donations, okay? So now let's go to the tax exempt trust. So this trust can be labeled as a church, a school, it can be labeled as a faith-based organization, it can be labeled as a charity, it is a nonprofit. And so this trust is automatically exempt from federal taxes, from the taxes that you pay to the IRS. It can also be exempt from state taxes, city taxes, county taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, and any other forms of taxes, okay? So with this trust, the reason why it is automatically exempt from federal taxes is due to the separation between church and state. So because you're going to operate it like a faith-based organization, which is for charitable reasons or educational purposes, that's why it qualifies. But you have to ensure that you are doing proper documentation and that you are documenting how the money is coming in. So the money needs to be documented that it is coming in as a donation or a tithe. If it comes in as income, then anything over $5,000 you're required to pay taxes on. But if it comes in and documented as a donation or a tithe, then you do not have to pay any taxes on those types of funds, okay? Now, the beautiful thing about this trust is that the IRS will allow you to donate up to 60% of your annual gross income to this charitable trust, okay? So, for example, if you are a W-2 employee, and let's just say that you make $100,000 per year, the IRS will allow you to donate up to $60,000 of that $100,000 to this charitable trust. And then from there, you are able to now only pay taxes on the $40,000, okay? So with that being said, you're going to be saving thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on taxes, right? On money that you would have to then, pay to the IRS. And so now you can keep that within the organization and you can allocate it somewhere else, like to an asset, right? Like real estate, crypto, stocks, bonds, businesses, okay? So that's going to put you in a position to where you get to grow your wealth efficiently and effectively. So let's move on to the second pillar, which is credit. So you need to put yourself in a position to where you are using OPM, other people's money. What I need you to know is that the trust can actually establish and build business credit. And that's going to be off of the EIN number, right? And so just like how you build credit for an LLC and a corporation, so you can do the same thing for the trust. Which is what you want to do. You want to be able to put yourself in a position to where you're leveraging a second credit profile where businesses will be eligible for higher lines of credit, meaning that they'll be eligible for, credit cards for, 25,000, 50,000, 100,000, okay? And so that is what you want to do. So now what you need to do is let's move on to the next one. So now that you get the OPM, right, which is the bank's money, right, because the bank is using your money, right? A lot of people, they don't even think and realize that the bank is using your money. When you get paid, your money goes straight to the bank. And what do you think the bank is doing with your money? They're pimping it out, right? They're lending it out to, all these other people and institutions for mortgages, credit cards, home loans, car loans, all kind of stuff, right? So you need to do what the bank is doing, right? And so they're using other people's money, which is yours. And so you need to use their money in order to also grow your wealth, okay? So let's talk about invest. So these are my two favorite assets. So the first one is the Index Universal Life Insurance Policy, and the second one is real estate. So when it comes to the first one, a lot of people think that life insurance is supposed to be used when they're dead, but in all actuality, life insurance is supposed to be used when they are living. That's why it's called life insurance and not death insurance, right? There's a lot of living benefits. So one of the living benefits is that if there's any medical issues that might arise, then it depends on it. But if it's life-threatening, then your life insurance policy will you can receive up to 80% of your death benefit, right? And they'll cover you because it has long-term care. The other thing is that with this type of policy, right? You have a death benefit associated with it. So your life is insured if anything happens, right? Then let's just say you have a $2 million death benefit. That death benefit goes straight to your beneficiary, right? Another thing is that the money that you're placing inside of the life insurance policy is growing tax-free, right? And the money that you're placing in here is also protected, meaning that if somebody tries to sue you personally, they cannot take the money, the liquid money that you have inside of your life insurance policy. Okay, so that money is protected. So what happens is you have another account in there for this particular policy, which is cash value. Okay. And so with the cash value, it's going to be compounding, it's going to earn compound interest. So what do we mean? So if you are paying your premiums, let's just say that you're paying $100 a month, right? $20 is going to the carrier, and that's the cost of insurance. The other $80 is going to your cash value. And so now your cash value is accumulating, but then it's also earning compound interest on top of the accumulation. How? Well, remember, do you see in the name it says Index Universal Life? The word index is actually referring to an indice. And this indice is a part of the stock market. So in the stock market, you have many different types of indices. You have the Dow Jones, you have the NASDAQ 100, and you also have the S&P 500. So the S&P 500, it stands for Standard & Poor's, and the 500 is tracking the top 500 companies in this country. So typically the average is about 8 to 10%. And so what happens is the life insurance company, they are not investing your money into the market. That is just too risky. So instead of them investing your money into the market, what they're going to do is they're going to allow your cash value to mirror the market. So your policy is going to mirror the market, and whatever the market does, you are going to match that. They are going to match it, and you're going to get those returns. So if the stock market is doing 8%, then they're going to give you an 8% return on your cash value. So now you're putting your money in a place where it is actually growing. And that is what you want to do, right? You want to go ahead and place your money into and park it into places where every single dollar is going to bring back a friend. Every single dollar is going to, bring back 25 cents, right? And so that is what you want to do with your money. You need to park it into places to where it is growing and it's doubling and quadrupling, okay? That is what you want to do. So with this type of policy, as I mentioned, it is liquid, right? It is liquid. So that money that's in your cash value is liquid. So the way that you connect it with the trust is that the trust is going to be the owner of your life insurance policy. You are going to be the insured. The trust is going to pay the premiums every single month. And the trust is also going to be the beneficiary of the life insurance policy, okay? Which is super powerful. So let's go ahead and talk about the next asset, which is real estate. But wait, one thing that I wanted to mention about life insurance is that every person on here needs life insurance, right? And so one thing that I want you to know that you didn't know is that the banks, right? A lot of people, they think that the banks, their number one assets is you know, that they're making, all of these millions of dollars through, all their lending products. But in all actuality, their number one asset is life insurance. So there is something called BOLI, and I need you to Google it. It's BOLI, which is bank owned life insurance. Okay. And so if the bank's number one asset is life insurance, what do you think your number one asset should be? So me, I have 5 policies. Why? Because I have 5 people in my trust. And so the trust owns all 5 policies. Okay. So with that being said, let's talk about real estate because that is my favorite thing to talk about. I have been a real estate investor for 11 years. And the way that I got into real estate, I had told you guys earlier, but the reason why is because it is so dear to my heart, right? So when I was younger, we had lived in an abandoned building, right? So I was like homeless with my parents living in an abandoned building. And so real estate just became so important because I saw my father get us out of that situation through flipping houses, and then I end up flipping houses, right? So what you want to do is you want to know and understand that a trust can own real estate. A trust can buy a house. A trust can get a mortgage. A trust can get a home equity line of credit. Okay? I need you to know and understand that. So let's just say that your trust, right? Because you need to put yourself in a position to where the trust is sustaining itself. We don't want to be pouring in our W-2 income into the trust. So this is the way that the trust is going to sustain itself. The trust is going to purchase real estate. So the type of loan, so the trust is going to get an investment property. Let's just say that the trust gets a triplex, right? And so the trust gets a DSCR, right? Debt service coverage ratio loan. Okay. And so that is an investment loan for an investment property. They only give that type of loan to entities. Okay. So with a DSCR, you can get up to 80% of the purchase price. So now that you're getting up to 80% of the purchase price, right? What you want to do is you want to be able to put yourself in a position to where you can get the other 20% using OPM. And so remember, if you back up a little bit, we had talked about credit and leveraging the bank and using OPM. Okay. And so that is where you're going to get your down payment. So let's just say that you started to build business credit with the trust, and the trust now has a credit card for $50,000, right? You're going to use that as the 20% down payment that you need for the triplex. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to strip that credit card. You're going to liquidate it. So now that you've liquidated that credit card, that 50,000 is sitting inside of your bank account. Before you go to close on that triplex, the first place that you need to go ahead and put that money is into your index universal life insurance policy. So you're going to put yourself in a position to where you're paying yourself first, because that money is going to go straight into the IUL policy, and your cash value is now going to go up by $50,000, which is exactly what you need. Why? Because now you're parking that money in a place where it's going to grow and earn compound interest, okay? And so that $50,000 is now going to earn 8, 9, 10% off of the stock market, right? One thing I love about the index universal life insurance policies is that your money is risk-free. Because if the stock market crashes, you're just going to get zero, right? It's not going to dip all the way down like you normally would if your money was inside of the stock market. So your money is not inside of the stock market, okay? So your money is going to be growing risk-free, okay, which is what you want, but you get to get higher returns with this type of policy. So we're gonna make, let's just say 9%, okay, which is beautiful. So now our 50,000 is sitting inside of our IUL earning 9% return, right? But we need that 50,000 for the down payment for the triplex. So we're going to call up the life insurance carrier and we're going to ask them for a loan. Now, remember, your policy is liquid. So they're going to look at your cash value. They're going to see that you have $50,000 in there, and they're going to say, yeah, we're going to lend you money from our reserves. We're going to lend you money from our bank account. We'll give you $49,000, right? And so they're going to do a direct deposit of $49,000 back into your bank account. Your $50,000 is sitting inside of your life insurance policy, growing, earning compound interest, right? And you have just borrowed their $49,000, okay? And so now what you're going to do with their $49,000 is you are now going to use it for the down payment on the real estate. One thing I want you to know is that you do not have to pay that loan back, because that loan is going to be automatically deducted from the death benefit, okay? So now you are now going to purchase the triplex, and so you use 80% down payment, which is the mortgage, which is the DSCR. Then you use the 20% down payment, which is the $49,000 that you just got from the credit card, okay? So now you've parked that money into a second place. You parked it into the IUL and it's making 8%. You parked it into real estate, and now that same money is cash flowing with the triplex. So let's just say that with this triplex, right? You closed on the triplex, congratulations. The trust now acquired its first rental property, right? And so what's going to happen is it's the first of the month, and all of your tenants just paid you $2,000 each. So that's $6,000. So what's the first thing that you're going to do with that $6,000? This is a
Pay the
question.
mortgage. Pay the mortgage.
Who said pay the mortgage?
I did.
Whose
Paul.
I did? Whose I did?
Paul.
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 Okay, Paul. Okay, Paul. So Paul said he wanted to pay the mortgage company first.
I would put it
Okay.
in my IUL.
All right. So Bridget says she wants to pay herself first. So I'm gonna go with Bridget
No, my
because
IUL. Yeah.
Yep. So Bridget is putting herself in a position to where she says, I'm gonna put it inside of my policy because that is me paying me before I pay the mortgage company. So that is exactly what you want to do. So sometimes this takes a mindset shift, everyone. It takes a mindset shift for you to be able to know and understand that you have to put yourself in a position to pay yourself first, right? If you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to keep getting what you've always gotten. Okay. And a lot of us out here in society, we're struggling, right? We're living paycheck to paycheck. We're on this hamster wheel, right? And we want to get off the hamster wheel. So it's going to take a different way of thinking in order for us to get off the hamster wheel. So instead of us paying the mortgage company first, the $6,000, what we're going to do is we're going to put that $6,000 into our IUL policy so that that $6,000 can grow and earn compound interest. And then we're going to borrow out what we need in order to cover the mortgage and the credit in the credit card. So what we're going to do is we're going to contact our life insurance carrier and we're going to say, hey, we need $5,000, right? So now they do a direct deposit of $5,000, and now we pay the mortgage and we pay the credit card, and whatever's left over, we let it sit inside of our trust fund account, okay? But the money that's sitting inside of your trust fund account is not accumulating. So you need to make sure that you're parking your money in places where it's doubling and tripling and getting pregnant, right? That is what we want. That is the goal. So a lot of us, we're in this mindset to where we think that we have to work in order to make money, right? When all in actuality, what you need to do is you need to put your money in places to where your money is working for you. Your money needs to work for you. Your money needs to go out and work, right? So that is what we need to do. And once again, it takes a mindset shift. So we need to pay ourselves first. So instead of us paying the mortgage, the light bill, the utilities, getting grocery, putting gas in the car, right? We're always going to funnel that money into our IUL, borrow it back out because it's still going to be earning compound interest. And then we're going to take out the loan, right? And the loan, we do have to pay interest on the loan, but it's a little bit. It's like 2%, right? So I'm earning 8, but I'm paying back 2, so I'm netting 6, okay? So that's a win-win situation for both parties, which is what we need to do, right? And so, once again, this is the wealth building formula. This is definitely what you want to do, in order to build wealth efficiently and effectively. Okay. So, that is where the trust is going to be put in a position to where it's sustaining itself and you're not pouring in your W-2 income into the trust. Another thing that I need you to know and understand is that you can buy real estate zero down. So every single property that I've purchased, I did not use any of my own money, and majority of all of the properties I got 100% financing on, okay? So right now my real estate portfolio is 7 figures. So I don't have to work for money. The money works for me, right? I was able to retire from my career as a registered nurse at 31 years old. Why? Because I didn't believe into the lies, right? The lies that society tells you. So what are the lies that society tells you? What are we programmed to think? Let me hear you guys say it, because I know what it is. What are we programmed to think? What does society, put us in this position to do?
Work until you can
collect Social
retire.
Security.
Working
Work
9 to
hard and
5.
save your money.
Exactly. Work hard, right? So go to school, work hard, get a career, work hard, right? And so I decided not to buy into that lie, but that is the lie that society tells you, which is that you need to work hard for money and that you need to trade your time for money. And so what are we doing? Well, what we're doing is we've decided to clock in and clock out and give them 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week for 40 years. And then what do we get? We get to retire when we're 65 years old. And at that point, that is when we get to enjoy life. That is when we get to go ahead and vacation, right? And it's like, who wants to vacation at 65? I might be tired at 65. I might have illnesses at 65. I might be stressed at 65. I might be a grandma at 65. You never know, right? But it's delay, delay, delay. So work now, right? Work for the next 40 years, right? That is what they tell you. And that is what we believe in. So we have bought into the lie and we have been programmed to think that. And we have been programmed to think that we need to depend on Social Security for our retirement. And so a lot of us, we haven't even prepared for retirement, right? And so what I want you to do is I want you to move away from that way of thinking. I want you to tell yourself that there is a new way of thinking. I want you to let yourself know that you do not have to work for money. So I will tell you briefly, right? When I realized this, I gave myself a deadline in my career. So I was a registered nurse working in the hospital, cardiovascular. My patients were coming in, high blood pressure, heart attack, stressed out, stents, open heart surgery, everything. I have seen it all, okay? And as I mentioned earlier in this call, right, working in those conditions, like I'm working 12-hour shifts, like sometimes I barely even have time to use the bathroom, right? Why? Because I'm pouring into my patients, right? And so one day I had a coworker, and my coworker, beautiful woman, right? Her name is Miss Audrey. And one day, she was 65, right? And so she was so exhausted. And so I had to step in and help her with some things with her patients. And so I looked at her and I saw how tired she was. And at this time, I'm in my 20s, right? Like 24. And so I saw how exhausted she was. And I looked at her and she was talking about how she has been a nurse for 40 years, right? And I said to her, I said, Miss Audrey, when are you going to retire? You have done your time. You have done your 40 years in the nursing field. You're 65 years old. When are you going to retire? She says to me, Christina, I'm not ready. I'm going to wait. And I said, wait until when? She says, I'm going to wait until I'm 67 and a half because then Social Security is going to give me an extra $200 or $300. And I felt so sad for her, but I didn't show it to her. And I told her, I said, okay, okay, Miss Audrey, so you have another 2.5 years before you're going to retire. And she's like, yes. And I said, okay, well, I'll be here, just helping you along the way. A month later, Miss Audrey was so exhausted after work that she drives out of the parking lot of the hospital and she hits the tree right in front of the emergency room and she dies on impact. She never made it to retirement. She died right there in the hospital. And when I saw that, I knew that that couldn't be me, that I was not going to buy into what society wanted for me, which was for me to work 40 years and retire at 65. So I told myself, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get out of my career in 10 years. And I retired myself in 8 years of the 10 years. And the way that I was able to retire myself was through real estate. So I want you to know that you do not have to work for money. You need to put money in places where it will work for you because I want you to enjoy life now, not later. And so just know that you have to rewire your brain to think in a different way. And so what I've shown you on this call is a different way of thinking. So I have like 2 more slides and then we're going to end the call, you guys. So this is how you're going to transfer wealth. I just told you how to build wealth, okay? And I was able to build wealth that way. A lot of the wealthiest people that you know of, or even that you don't know of, they build wealth that way, okay? This is how you transfer wealth, okay? You need to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. So that is stewardship, where you are a good steward of the assets. You are a good steward of the wealth, right? So you steward the money in the right way. You steward the assets and maintain them and manage them in the right way, okay? And as a result, the money grows, the money accumulates, the assets grow, the assets accumulate, okay? So you have to put yourself in that position versus the position that we know of now, right? So a lot of us, we think that we need to own everything, right? And so we have also been programmed to think, get the house with the white picket fence and then you'll be happy, right? But then we get the house and we own the house in our personal name, right? And so we are holding on to all these things because we want it to be in our name. And so we're like, hey, I'm the proud owner of this house with the white picket fence. Hey, I'm the proud owner of this car. Hey, I'm the proud owner of this bank account with $100,000 in it, right? And so that's how we've been programmed to think. When in all actuality, what is your true goal, right? So you have to really think about it, right? So if something were to happen to you, right, where you didn't wake up tomorrow, that house where you live in, the house with the white picket fence, right, where you live, where your children live, that house is still going to be there. So if you think about it, what you really want is you want to maintain control over that house while you're living. It's not that you want to be the proud owner of the house. It's that you want to have full control over the house while you're on this earth. And so you can have that by having a trust, because a trust is going to put you in a position to where you own nothing but control everything, which is stewardship. And so we need to move away from how we're operating, which is ownership. So move away from ownership and move towards stewardship, because that is where you're going to reach your goals, right? Which is, I have control over all the assets, okay? The next thing is, a lot of us, we have never asked ourselves, how am I going to transfer this wealth? Right? And so we are so focused on making the money, right? We're going to work, we're getting these degrees, we're making the money, we're getting promotions, raises, all kind of stuff, right? And so we're so focused on making the $1 million. But we never stop to ask ourselves, how are we going to transfer the $1 million? And so this is how you transfer the $1 million, right? Is through TCUs, which stands for Trust Certificate Units. Okay, so every single trust is going to establish TCUs, right? And so the trust is going to have 100 TCUs. TCUs are just like stock certificates. So you know how stock certificates represents ownership in a corporation, like it shows you what your ownership interest is. Well, the same thing goes for TCUs, but we don't use the word owner, right? Or ownership. So we use the word beneficial interest. So your trust certificate units are going to represent your beneficial interest in a trust. So remember, we said 100 TCUs, that represents 100% of beneficial interest, right? So what we're saying is that the 100 TCUs is going to demonstrate, or is going to represent, the entire net worth of the trust. Let's just say that the net worth of the trust is $1 million, right? So if I'm one of your beneficiaries and I have 15 TCUs, that means that my TCUs are equivalent to $150,000 of the $1 million, right? So that is how you're going to transfer wealth, because you're going to give the TCUs to your beneficiaries, which are your children. And that is going to show what their percentage is of how much they're going to be entitled to in the trust. And whenever the trust is dissolved, that's when they'll receive their inheritance. But the whole entire goal is not for the trust to be dissolved. The whole entire goal is for the trust to outlive you and continue to last many generations into the future. So a lot of us, we walk around here talking about, I'm building generational wealth. But are you really building generational wealth? Do you have the tools to build generational wealth? Because there are certain tools that you need in order to build generational wealth. So you cannot walk around here lying to everyone, telling them that you're building generational wealth when you don't have the two tools. So the two tools that you need is, one, a trust. The second one is life insurance policy. Why? Because that's going to put you in a position to where you then get to ensure that that money is going to last many generations into the future. So that's going to put you in a position to where you are preserving the wealth. A lot of us, we don't even think about preservation of wealth. How many times have we seen it to where you have celebrities and famous families to where they blow their money in their lifetime, or the money doesn't even last the second generation? Why? Because they haven't put the tools in place for preservation of wealth. So when you preserve your wealth, what happens is you're going to get a life insurance policy and you're going to get the trust. So the trust has many assets, right? So the trust has a house. So the trust insures all of its assets. So because the trust has a house, it has homeowners insurance. Because the trust has a car, it has automobile insurance. Because the trust has cash money in the bank, it has FDIC insurance. So the trust also has what we call human assets. Those human assets are you as the trustee, as well as your beneficiaries, as well as the future beneficiaries. Those are the human assets. So you are going to ensure, the trust is going to insure every single human asset. The trust is going to insure you and all of the beneficiaries and all of the future beneficiaries. Why? Because if something happens to you, the trust is devastated, right? The trust needs to be compensated for that loss. So if you have a life insurance policy and you have a death benefit of $2 million, that $2 million now goes straight to the trust fund. And the trust is now replenished with $2 million because it lost its most valuable asset, which is you, the trustee. That is extremely powerful. And so not only you are going to be insured, but the beneficiaries and the future beneficiaries. Those future beneficiaries, they're called trust fund babies. Why? So when you hear the term trust fund baby, it means that a baby has been born into the trust organization. So that means that your beneficiary had a baby. And now that baby, is a part of the trust. And so that baby that was just born, that trust fund baby that was just born, as soon as that baby is 30 days old, guess what we do? We put an index universal life insurance policy on that baby. And so now the trust is going to be the owner of that policy. The baby's going to be insured. The trust is going to pay the $100 premiums every single month. And the trust is going to be entitled to that death benefit, right? So now the trust is paying the $100 premiums every single month. And guess what? The cash value is going up, increasing, right? On a monthly basis. And it's going to be earning compound interest, right? And so what's going to happen? Well, let's just say that that trust fund baby, fast forward into the future, that trust fund baby grows up. That trust fund baby is now 18 years old and they say, hey, I need to get a car. I'm going to college. They can easily go down to the dealership and purchase a vehicle, right? They can pull their credit, get into an auto loan, start paying $1,000 a month for a $30,000 car, right? They can do that. Or instead of them doing that, they can go to the trust and they can request a loan. And they can say, hey, I'm a trust fund baby. Can I get a loan for $30,000 so that I can go buy my first car? And so the trustee is going to say, yes, here are the terms and the conditions, and here's a check for $30,000. Hands it to the trust fund baby, and they go buy their car, right? And so now what the terms and conditions are is that the trust fund baby has to pay the trust $300, right? And it's a win-win situation, right? And so now the trust fund baby is paying every single month, every single month. Let's just say a year into the future, the trust fund baby is like, no, I don't want to pay $300 to the trust anymore. So they default on that loan. It was actually a risk-free loan. So it's okay that the trust fund baby defaulted because it was a risk-free loan. And the reason why it was a risk-free loan is because the money did not originate from the trust fund. The money originated from the trust fund baby's life insurance policy. The minute that that trust fund baby went to the trust organization to request a loan for $30,000, the trustee contacted the carrier and requested a loan from the carrier for $30,000. The carrier looked at all of the cash value that had been accumulating for the last 18 years, and they did a direct deposit into the trust fund account for $30,000. And that is how the trustee was able to hand a $30,000 check to the beneficiary. Now that trust fund baby, that was a risk-free loan, right? And so what happens is when that trust fund baby transitions, that death benefit goes straight to the trust minus the $30,000. So it's going to be $2 million minus the $30,000. It goes straight into the trust. So it is okay. That is what preservation of wealth looks like. That is the missing component that you haven't thought about, that you need to think about. That is how you're going to ensure that the wealth that you are creating and that you want to protect actually lasts 5, 6, 7 generations into the future. Because I will tell you right now, if you hand $1 million to your son or your daughter, it'll probably be wasted in 2 years. But if you have the right tools in place to where you have a trust set up, you have spendthrift provisions so that they don't blow the dough, so that you're able to control the money from the grave now while you're living and when you transition, and you have the preservation tools of life insurance policies, you will build generational wealth that lasts 10 and 15 generations into the future. And that is the beginning of your legacy. These are the books that I recommend. What Would the Rockefellers Do is a really good book that teaches you about the connection between trust and life insurance. The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2 teaches you about trusteeship, how to actually operate a trust. Family Wealth teaches you how to run your family like a business. Do you know that you're supposed to be running your family like a business? Do you know that you're the CEO of your family? Do you know that your spouse is the CFO of your family? Do you know that your children are secretaries and treasurers? And then the last one is the Complete Book of Trust, which teaches you about the different types of trust. Remember, I told you that there's hundreds of different types of trust. You have to choose the right trust for you and your family. So this is a quick video that I want to show you based off of a trustee that took action on the information that I provided tonight.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while, and there are a number of people offering trust these days, and I guess that's the big thing. Don't own anything, control everything. That kind of, I didn't say it correctly, but that is the sentiment. And so it seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions, things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you. And thank you, Mondo. That was a great explanation of infinite banking. I know a number of people are talking about that, but they make it so complex. And his presentation was nice and succinct and very informative. So this has been an overall great experience. I definitely will recommend you to others.
So you need to take action on the information that I provided tonight, you guys, because it could be your new form of doing business and making profit within your business. It could also solve a lot of the problems that you have when it comes to protecting your assets and when it comes to saving on taxes. So you want to treat this like a big business. You want to treat this like it is Google and Facebook and Amazon. You don't want to treat your life and your business and your organization and your structure like it's some small little mom and pop shop, because that's not what this is. You are leaving a legacy. And so now it's time for you to take control and for you to get your affairs in order so that you are able to protect what you have and that you are able to ensure that the future assets that you're going to get are already structured, right? And protected, because you want to be able to build that solid foundation. Right now, you have built a house on soft soil. You do not have a foundation on that house, which means that everything that you have, from the money, the cars, the houses, and everything, can come crumbling down because you don't have a solid foundation within your structure. You're at risk, your family's at risk, and it just takes one wrong move. And you don't want to be that person. So in 2026, it's time for us to stop procrastinating. It's time for us to get off the fence and for us to actually take action. So with that being said, I do have a program so we can actually work together. Inside of my program, I have three different ways that you can get in. And so the first way is you can do it yourself through our course. And so the course has the video modules, and the way that it is designed is we provide you with the trust templates. You watch the video trainings, which are so thorough, and it is step by step where I go ahead and break down every single paragraph of the trust indentures so that you can learn how to set it up, okay? So we provide you with three different types of trust templates. So we provide you with the business trust so that you can own your LLCs and corporations. We provide you with the family trust, which is for your personal holdings. So that is for your primary residence, your insurance policies, your stocks and bonds and crypto. And then we provide you with the tax exempt nonprofit trust, okay? So, as I mentioned, you're going to watch a video training, you're going to set up the trust, okay? So you get lifetime access to the course. You also get access to the resources and ebooks. So the list of books that I just mentioned, you get them inside of the program in an electronic form. And some of those books, just for one, is over $800. So you get the electronic version. And then as far as the resources, right, we provide you with every single thing that you're going to need in order to operate your trust efficiently and effectively. For example, if you need to file taxes, we provide you with a 1041 form. If you need to have a board meeting, we provide you with the meeting templates. If you need to transfer your house, we provide you with the quick claim deeds, right? So there's so many resources that we provide so that you have everything that you need so that you can do this the right way, right? And then we also have a private Facebook community where you're able to network with like-minded individuals, and we have a Telegram chat where you're able to chat with all of our trustees. So we have over 1,300 trustees in our community, and these individuals are just like you. So they already have gone through the process where they have their houses in a trust, they have trust bank accounts, they have their car in a trust, things like that, and they are operating within trusteeship. And so some of these individuals are in the same city and state where you are, and so you have full access to other trustees. We are a community, okay? So the do-it-yourself course is only $997. And then the second option is done with you. So done with you is where we do it in 5 days, and it is in a workshop style setting. So we are actually running a workshop this week. So we just started on Monday. So on Monday, what we do is it's Monday through Friday from 11 in the morning to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Monday, we help you set up the business trust. So I break down every single paragraph of the trust. So all of the sections, all of the provisions, all of the articles, so that you can understand the contents of the trust. You are not going to know how to operate a trust if you don't know what's inside of it. So I'm here to teach you what's inside of the trust contract. That contract alone is 50 pages, okay? And so we break down all 50 pages. I show you how to actually set it up, and then we open up the floor for Q&A so I can answer all of your questions. On Tuesday, we focus on setting up the family trust. So we break down every single paragraph, show you how to set it up, and then we dive into Q&A. On Wednesday, I show you how to set up the tax exempt nonprofit trust, and then I show you how to get your EIN numbers with the IRS, and then I show you how to become an ordained minister if you want to operate it that way. So the thing about doing it as a group, like how we're on Zoom right now as a group, is that you are in a place with like-minded individuals and they are asking really good questions that you didn't know that you wanted to know. And so you end up learning more just by feeding off of the other people in the Zoom, right? And so on Thursday, we focus on OPM, other people's money. So after we apply for our EINs, then we go through the process of getting your bank accounts for your trust. So I give you a list of banks so that you can establish a banking relationship with them. And then after that, we show you how to have a board meeting. We go through banking procedures and operations, and then we give you a promissory note so that you're able to document how much you're going to fund the trust with, right? And then one of our educators, which is our funding manager, he comes in and he teaches you how to set up the business credit and how to get business funding so that you are able to get the funding you need for the trust, right? Remember, the trust needs to start with some type of funding so that it can go and acquire assets and sustain itself, okay? And then the last day is Friday. So on Friday, we focus on asset protection. So first thing we do is we take an inventory of the assets so we know which assets we're going to put in the trust and which assets don't qualify and they have to stay out of the trust, okay? After that, then I show you how to transfer your property into the trust, and that is by way of a quitclaim deed. And I show you where to record it with the county recorder's office. Then I show you how to transfer a vehicle into the trust by way of a bill of sale that needs to be recorded with the DMV. And then I show you how to transfer your business. So we do a business purchase agreement, and then after that, I show you how to do your amendment with the articles of organization with the Secretary of State so that you are able to remove yourself as the authorized member of those LLCs, okay? And then after that, our CPA comes in and teaches you about trust taxes, answers all of your tax questions, and shows you how to fill out the 1041 form so that you are educated and informed on what you need to do, okay? So with that being said, you get a lot of assistance, accountability, a lot of support. You do have access to the do-it-yourself program and course. You do have access to all the resources, ebooks, Facebook community, Telegram chat, and the workshop. You have lifetime access to the workshop. So we do the workshop every 4 weeks, okay? So right now we're running a workshop. Our next workshop is going to be the second week of February. So it'll be February 9th to the 13th. But we have a workshop that's going on now this week. So the workshop is only $2,500. And then the last option is done for you, where me and my team will set up the 3 trusts for you. We will apply for your EINs. We will transfer all of your assets. You get individualized support with me and my team, and we customize your trust. So you do get private sessions with me, and the done for you is only $7,500, and you still get access to the workshops and the do-it-yourself program. With the workshops, they are recorded. So in the event that you are not able to attend the workshops, they are recorded and you can access the recording at any point in time. So with that being said, if you guys are interested, then you can go to our website. So the website is wealthytrustee.com, and you can send us an email. You can visit us on social media. You can also call the number that you see on the screen. So you can either text us the word trust, or you can call us and we'll answer so that we can answer any questions that you guys might have. So for those of you guys that are on the call right now, if you enroll in the next 24 hours, you can enjoy 20% off using the discount code TRUST20. So now what I want to do is I want to actually show you what a trust looks like, and then I also want to show you what the program looks like. So, one second. So this is the actual program. So when you enroll into the do-it-yourself course or any of the programs, you get access to the online portal. So you will receive login credentials, and here is where you're able to access all of the training. So after your induction, we start off with trust entities, so you can learn what a trust is. You can learn who the grantors, trustees, beneficiaries, successors, protectors are, the benefits of the trust, the different types of trust. Then you learn how to set up the tax exempt trust. Then you learn how to set up the family trust. Then you learn how to set up the business trust. So we do an overview of the entire indenture. Then you learn about tax strategies, like how to operate tax exempt and the difference between nonprofit and profit, for profit. And then we go through asset protection, where you take an inventory of your assets, and then we teach you how to open up bank accounts, brokerage accounts, and how to transfer your house, your car, life insurance policies, businesses, and how to have board meetings. And then we go through a wealth creation, where you learn how to build business credit and how to invest it in the stock market, specifically acquiring index funds for the trust, and how to do the infinite banking with the life insurance policies. And then you learn about the legacy crest, and then you have access to your resources and your ebooks. So this is what an actual trust looks like. So this is a contract. Everything that you see in red is what you're going to be customizing for your organization. And so all of these provisions, as I mentioned, is what we break down in order for you to be educated and for you to learn what's inside of the trust so that you can properly operate it. So with that being said, I will open up the floor for Q&A if you guys have any questions. And I'll also check in the chat. Let me check in the chat. Any questions? You guys can come off mute, ask me anything while I'm here. We have a couple more minutes.
I have
know
a
that.
Yes,
tax question.
Uh-huh.
So if I'm on like a 1099 right now as like a contractor, am I able to still put that money into the trust, or would I have to go a different route?
Yeah, you can put that money into a trust. So you can either, if you have personal funds that you are accumulating from a 1099, you can lend that money to the trust. And so we show you how to document how you're going to lend money to the trust. If you want to redo your 1099 to have the trust be paid directly, then you would have to fill out a new W-4. And on that W-4, instead of you being taxed as an individual with your Social Security, you can choose trust on that form, and then you put the trust in the EIN, and then they will pay the trust directly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening,
So,
Christina. This is
Hi,
Bridget.
Christina.
hi, are you guys able to raise your hand? I know Bridget has a question. I'm not sure who's after Bridget.
My name's Mike.
Okay, Mike, I'll come to you next. Hey, Bridget.
Hey, Christina. I just have a couple quick questions. Can a grantor be a beneficiary? I know he can't be a trustee, otherwise that's his alter ego, but can he be a beneficiary?
No.
Okay.
Yep.
That still falls into the same alter ego category.
Yep. The grantor cannot be anything else.
Okay.
But
So then the second question is if I put my land in a community land trust for a faith-based organization, The beneficiary that benefits the community, are they the beneficiaries, or do I get to name the beneficiaries from that faith-based organization trust?
So the beneficiaries cannot be a natural person. You can name who you would like, but it has to be an entity.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, my dear.
You're welcome, Bridget. All right,
You're
next we
wonderful.
have, thank you. Next we have Mike.
Hi, Christina. I appreciate so
Hi.
much. I appreciate your heart in all of this, and I love your story with your coworker. That's touching, and I appreciate the fact that you took the time to invest into all this. I just want to get
Thank
to the
you.
point. So,
Thank you.
so I had been praying about this for a long time, and God opened this up to me, and I was able to actually create a spendthrift trust, an irrevocable non-grantor trust with a 508. And I
Right.
also created an LLC trustee through Wyoming. So it's basically bulletproof right at this point in time. We've transferred all of our properties. We have investment properties, we have homes, we have all our vehicles. We've got all our vehicles titled in their own land trust. Every house has been quick claimed. Like, we've done everything. I'm
Mhm.
at the point where I didn't fully understand how to use the IUL. I've had an IUL for years and years and years, and no one ever taught me about it. Not
Oh,
really, but it wasn't inside the trust. So my IUL is in my personal name, and the beneficiary is the Spendthrift Trust.
oh, okay.
So
Okay,
what
so
I'm wanting to do is, I have a 21-year-old daughter, and we want to open up a whole life or IUL policy on her and use that as the family vault.
that
But
is
I
great.
don't but I don't know where to set up that kind of a policy to be able to have it where it's like a 20-80 split, like what you were saying, where it would be the most beneficial for the trust to be able to start actually moving money in it so it's not in her personal name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the way that I mentioned it, is all in the way that they structure it. So every single policy is different. So my policy and your policy are two different policies, and they were structured differently. So when I was talking about that 80-20 split, that happens when you structure the policy. So that's before the policy even becomes active. You have to set it up that way to
Right.
to
I just don't know who would do that. Who actually would set it up that way? Because I haven't seen them where they're that good.
Yeah, and the reason being, I will be very transparent and honest with you. So you have to understand that life insurance agents, they are living off of commission, and they're getting commission off of your policy. And so usually the type of policy, or not the type, but the way that they're going to structure your policy is high death benefit and low cash value, so that they can get the most commission, because they get probably
Right.
anywhere between 75 to even sometimes over 100% in commission, right? And so you have to find the right life insurance company and agent that will flip it. They have to do it the other way around. So they have to have the integrity to say, I'm going to take a pay cut in order for the best interests of my client. And so instead of me structuring it to where it's high death benefit, low cash value, I'm going to structure it the other way to where it's high cash value, low death benefit. And so that's the way that it needs to be structured.
And I understand that. And I'm just wondering if, like, in your information, because I'm trying to figure out where we fit into this. I'm probably 95% of the way to where we need to be. We have an existing LLC contracting business as well, that I have W-2 income in, that we're trying to move that in because we've conveyed it into a business trust. So we're trying to figure all of this stuff out. There's a lot of moving parts, but like, trying to find companies that will set it up properly like that. I'm wondering if your information or where we would fit in with that, because we don't need everything.
Yeah, you just need the IUL. That's perfect. So we can definitely help you. We'll point you in the right direction. So you do have to click the link that's inside of the chat that says life insurance policy setup.
Okay, and then in regards to like the contracting business, I have an existing LLC with its own EIN I've run for 30 plus years. That's a contracting business, and I've been so sketchy because I thought it would draw UBIT, and I wasn't sure how to move it into the actual trust and then be able to make those donations as well, like what you were saying. All of what you said made so much sense, but I just didn't know how to do it. No one teaches anything like that.
Okay. So are you saying that you don't know how to physically transfer it through the Secretary of State? Or like all of the paperwork, because that's not, so we do a lot of various different paperwork to remove ourselves as being liable if we're the authorized member of the LLC. So we have to write a separate contract for liability purposes, and then we process the amendments through the articles of organization through the Secretary of State where the LLC was formed.
Gotcha. No, I'm not talking about that. So what we were looking at was obviously our business trust has its own EIN. So we were going to move all of the income from the actual LLC into the business trust, and it would be tied to that EIN. But because I received checks in the name of the actual business, we were at loggerheads because the EIN wouldn't match the name on the trust, and we didn't know how we could move money from our actual business into the trust and be able to, tax defer and all of that.
Yeah. So what you want to do is, it's like the way that you're doing it is not like it's not clean. It's not like seamless, right? That's not what you want to do. What you want to do is you want to remove yourself as the owner and have the business trust be the owner so that the money can flow from the construction company. You don't want to just stop operating the construction company. So all of those payees and those account receivables, they still need to pay the construction company. So it sounds like you've already moved stuff around, but it should have remained intact. You should have never moved it around because you want all of that liability to still fall on the LLC.
Yeah, it hasn't been moved around. We were just thinking about how to be able to move it around. So I guess what I'm thinking is, because I don't want to take all your time. I know I have a lot of questions, but we're a
Yeah.
long ways to there. But I just need to know, like, where do you think we would fit? Like, what would we need from you guys to be able to complete the process, to be able to set it up right?
Yeah. So, um, do you have a business trust?
We do. It's a PMA.
Yeah, so a PMA is not a business trust. A PMA
Well,
is,
we set up the business trust as part of the 508 is actually what the ministry trust is. That's what everything is based off of, is the 508. The LLC is owned by the 508. That's the sole owner, so that I'm not on it. So everything is tied off of that.
The business trust, like, she's asking about that.
yeah. So, it does sound like you have, so it sounds like the way that you're structured is good, but it does sound like you have some missing components. Um, the thing is, and I really don't want to talk about it here, so I would tell you to like book a call with me because
Okay.
I personally don't like to do it the way that you're doing it, which is for profit and nonprofit. So the way that you're structured, if you're telling me this correctly, is that you have a nonprofit that owns the for profit.
No, no.
So
No,
so
There's
they're
a
they're not they're not separate.
Tell her there's a holding company.
no, there's a holding company.
Okay. All right. So
No,
we're gonna have to have a separate discussion
Okay.
respectfully. So I do have the link to my calendar in the chat. And if you're interested, just go ahead and click on the link, okay?
Sounds good. I appreciate you taking the time. I know it was a lot,
Sure.
but I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
You're welcome, Mike. Thank you.
All
Appreciate
right,
you.
bye-bye.
And it sounds like you have a lovely lady in the back too. So tell her I said hello.
Thanks, Christina.
You're welcome, my dear. All right, so let me see if there's any other questions. I don't see any other questions. Is there anybody else that have any other questions? If not, we are going to conclude the call for tonight.
I have an
In
easy question.
Okay.
I just want to know because when it comes to like the grantor and the beneficiary and the trustee, I don't know exactly who would be like the grantor. If I'm going to be the trustee, would that be someone related or they can be both at the same thing?
Yeah, so you can't serve as the grantor and the trustee, so you do want to choose someone else. Best practice is to not choose someone that's related to you. So you want to choose like a friend, a coworker, a neighbor, someone like that. The good thing is that in our community, since we have, thousands of people, we have a volunteer list with individuals that will volunteer to be your grantor. So if you need help with that.
So, because they would still be like the ones to purchase or write in the, like, for example, a life insurance policy or whatever asset you want to transfer into the trust, right? It only could be the.
So they are responsible for putting the first thing of value into the trust. But not all the assets. So the trustee or anyone can put assets, can donate or gift or convey assets into the trust. So for example, if you have a life insurance policy, you can put your life insurance policy into the trust.
Okay. So, but the first thing it has to be the grantor to put the first asset in.
Right. And so we'll make it something um small like $1 or two or 10 or a piece of silver or gold.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your little class here. I will be trying to get another go at it. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ricky. All right, guys. So we are all done for today. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I do appreciate you staying for the whole 2 hours. And I just want to tell you guys to take action on the information that I provided tonight because it is going to change the trajectory of your life and of your children's life because now you're going to be raising them to be trustees of a trust versus how they're being raised now, which is for them to go to school and, work 40 hours for 40 years and get a paycheck from Social Security. So, with that being said, it's time for us to build a legacy in 2026 and for us to solidify that solid foundation that all starts with a trust. So if you have any questions, reach out to me and my team. You can give us a call, you can visit our website or send us an email. So without further ado, you guys have a good night. Thank you so much.